The tragic case of James Bulger's murder remains one of the most shocking and heartbreaking events in British criminal history. On February 12, 1993, two 10-year-old boys, Jon Venables and Robert Thompson, brutally abducted and killed 2-year-old James Bulger in what is often described as a crime that shocked the world. This article will explore the events leading up to the murder, the investigation that followed, and the aftermath of this horrifying incident. The brutality of the crime, the age of the offenders, and the media storm that followed all contributed to making this case a landmark moment in criminal justice history in the UK. Early life of James Bulger. James Patrick Bulger was born on March 16, 1990, in Liverpool, England. He was the second child of Denise and Ralph Bulger. James' parents described him as a happy and playful child, enjoying the simple pleasures of life, such as playing with his older brother and spending time with his mother. At the time of his death, James was just 2 years old, and his tragic passing has haunted his family ever since. James lived in the Walton area of Liverpool, a working-class neighborhood with a strong sense of community. He was described as a typical toddler who loved to play and was particularly close to his mother, Denise. His short life was filled with the joy of a child, but was tragically cut short in a way that no parent should ever have to experience. The day of the murder. On February 12, 1993, Denise Bulger took her son James to the Strand Shopping Centre in Bootle, Liverpool. They were enjoying a quiet afternoon out when James wandered away from his mother. At approximately 3:40 p.m., James was spotted by two young boys, Jon Venables and Robert Thompson, who were also at the shopping center that day. The two boys had been hanging out together, seemingly without any adult supervision. The CCTV footage from the shopping center later showed them luring James away from his mother, walking hand in hand with him. Venables and Thompson led James away, taking him through the streets of Liverpool on a journey that would end in horrific violence. At one point, a shopkeeper witnessed the boys leading James away and briefly stopped them, but under the assumption that they were together, did nothing to intervene. The murder. Once they had taken James to a secluded railway track, the two boys carried out a brutal and violent assault. They tortured James in a way that is difficult to comprehend, inflicting severe injuries to his head and body. They struck him with bricks, stones, and an iron bar, leaving him with horrific injuries, including severe head trauma. The violence was so intense that his injuries were described as comparable to those of a car crash victim. The boys even placed James' body on the railway tracks, presumably hoping that the passing train would make it appear as though he had died in an accident. Their actions revealed a chilling disregard for life, and their complete lack of remorse only deepened the horror of the crime. According to later psychiatric assessments, the two boys showed little understanding of the magnitude of their actions, though they were capable of acting out their crime with chilling precision. Discovery of the body. James's body was discovered the following day, February 13, 1993, by a group of children playing near the railway tracks. They initially mistook the body for a doll, but upon closer inspection, realized it was the body of a child. The police were called, and the scene was quickly cordoned off. The discovery of his body sent shockwaves throughout the nation, and the police launched an intensive investigation into the abduction and murder. The authorities worked around the clock, scouring the area for clues. The brutality of the crime, combined with the fact that the victim was a toddler, stirred a profound sense of outrage and disbelief among the public. The investigation and arrests. The investigation was swift and thorough. Following the discovery of James's body, the police began to focus their attention on the two boys who had been seen in the area. The breakthrough came when CCTV footage from the shopping center was reviewed, showing Venables and Thompson walking hand in hand with James. This footage was crucial in identifying the boys as the perpetrators. Additionally, witnesses had reported seeing the boys in the area shortly before and after the crime. Within days, Jon Venables and Robert Thompson were arrested. They initially denied any involvement in the crime, But after hours of questioning, they eventually confessed. Their confessions revealed the chilling details of the abduction, including how they had manipulated James and carried out the murder. The police were also able to gather forensic evidence that further linked the boys to the crime scene. The trial. The trial of Jon Venables and Robert Thompson began on November 1, 1993, in a case that would attract intense media scrutiny. Both boys were charged with the abduction and murder of James Bulger. Due to their age, they were tried as juveniles in a trial held in camera, meaning the public and media were not allowed to attend the proceedings. The prosecution argued that the boys had planned the abduction and murder and presented evidence showing that the boys had deliberately chosen James as a target. Defense lawyers for the boys argued that their actions were influenced by their young age and lack of understanding of the consequences. The case presented a difficult moral dilemma. Were these boys merely influenced by the environment they grew up in, or were they inherently capable of such violent acts? After weeks of legal proceedings, both boys were found guilty. On November 24, 1993, they were sentenced to detention at Her Majesty's pleasure, which meant they would serve an indefinite sentence in a juvenile facility, with the possibility of release only when deemed appropriate by the government. The aftermath. The murder of James Bulger and the subsequent trial of Venables and Thompson sparked widespread debate about the age of criminal responsibility and the nature of juvenile crime. Many questioned whether 10-year-olds were capable of committing such heinous acts and whether the age of criminal responsibility, which was then set at 10 in the UK, should be raised. The case also led to discussions about the influence of violent media, including films, video games, and television programs, on young minds. At the time, some sources suggested that the boys had been influenced by violent imagery, though it was later argued that other factors, such as abuse and neglect, played a larger role. In the years following the trial, there was continued public debate about how best to handle juvenile offenders, particularly those who committed violent crimes at a young age. The psychological impact on the offenders. Both Jon Venables and Robert Thompson have been the subject of extensive psychological evaluations. Experts debated whether the boys were inherently violent or whether their behavior was influenced by factors such as neglect, abuse, and the environment in which they were raised. In the case of Jon Venables, psychiatric reports revealed that he had a history of violent tendencies and had been exposed to disturbing images at a young age. Meanwhile, Robert Thompson appeared to be more passive and less likely to engage in violent behavior without the influence of Venables. However, both boys were found to have a disturbing lack of remorse for their actions. In their psychological evaluations, both boys exhibited traits associated with conduct disorder and antisocial behavior, although these traits were often attributed to their difficult upbringings and their exposure to violence. The fate of Jon Venables. After serving his sentence and being released on parole in 2001, Jon Venables' life was marked by further controversy. In 2010, he was arrested for possessing child pornography and sent back to prison. This event caused an uproar, particularly because Venables had been given a new identity and was under strict supervision after his release. The fact that he had reoffended so severely only added to the public's anger and disbelief. Venables' arrest was widely covered in the media, and the case once again brought up discussions about the effectiveness of rehabilitation for young offenders who commit violent crimes. He was sentenced to prison for a second time, and his identity was kept secret for his own safety. As of 2023, Jon Venables is still serving his sentence in prison. The fate of Robert Thompson. Robert Thompson, like Venables, was released on parole after serving his sentence. He largely kept a low profile after his release and has avoided public attention. There have been no significant reports on Thompson's behavior or any new criminal activities, suggesting that he has attempted to lead a private life. However, Thompson's anonymity has sparked some debate regarding his rehabilitation and whether he has truly been reintegrated into society. In contrast to Venables, who has had ongoing issues, Thompson has remained out of the spotlight. His case raises questions about the effectiveness of parole and the long-term impact of such a brutal crime on juvenile offenders. That concludes the tragic and chilling story of James Bulger. Don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and hit that subscribe button for more true crime stories. Your support means a lot, and it helps us bring more content to you. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our next video.